In the summer of 2023, North Korean leader Kim Jong Un met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Russia's Far East. Following a tour of a Russian fighter jet factory that's under Western sanctions, as well as a critical Russian spaceport, the North Korean leader pledged Pyongyang's full and unconditional support for Russia's security and defense needs. Only a month later, satellite images would confirm that this exchange goes much further than initially thought. North Korea is supplying hundreds of boxes filled with ammunition for the war against Ukraine. Analysts say in return for supporting the Kremlin, North Korea may be interested in advanced technologies from Russia for its weapons, and most importantly, its nuclear program. When Russia began its war against Ukraine, nobody thought it would last as long as it has. Now, dangerously low on ammunition, a poorer Russia is turning to one of its oldest and most controversial allies. In 1948, relations between Moscow and a newly formed Pyongyang government began strong when Soviet officials installed the nationalist Kim Il-sung, the late grandfather of Kim Jong Un, as the country's first ruler. For decades, Soviet aid shipments were crucial for keeping the North Korean economy afloat. With some of this money, North Korea has been producing large amounts of artillery shells and rockets compatible with Soviet and Russian weapons in case war breaks out with their southern neighbor. In the summer of 2023, Kim Jong Un visited Russia on his first diplomatic trip since the COVID-19 pandemic, and the longest in his time in power as supreme leader of North Korea. During this visit, Kim visited Russian military and technical sites and met with senior military officials. He called for an exponential increase in the production of nuclear weapons for his country to play a more significant role in a coalition of nations confronting the United States in a new kind of Cold War. The North Korean ruler also called his country's relations with Russia his top priority and pledged full support for President Putin. While the two nations confirmed boosting their defense ties without specifics, analysts worldwide began speculating on the nature of their dealings. The arrangement would put them in clear violation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions. This would all be confirmed 1 month later. On October 13, 2023, John Kirby, a National Security Council spokesman, announced that as many as 1,000 containers with varied equipment and munitions had been delivered from North Korea to Russian borders in recent weeks. This announcement was complemented by a White House photo release of imagery of about 300 containers assembled in North Korea, delivered to an ammunition depot in southwestern Russia near Tukharetsk, only 180 miles away from the Ukrainian border. But newer satellite images, analyzed by the British Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, suggest that North Korea's trade of military equipment and munitions is a much more elaborate and extensive operation than initially thought. Not one, but 2 ships have been traveling since mid-August, going back and forth between the northeastern North Korean port of Rajin and a secure port facility in Dunai in Russia's Far East at least 5 times. Although it is impossible to tell what is being transported, the images show ships linked to the Russian military logistics network, strongly suggesting these commercial vessels carry military equipment. This analysis provided the clearest evidence that, after support from Russia for decades, Pyongyang is now helping poor Moscow's war effort. Previously, the 2 ships had no record of running this route between North Korea and Russia until after the high-level meetings between the 2 nations. The satellite image analysis made by RUSI found that the Russian-flagged cargo ship, the Angara, began traveling between Rajin, North Korea, and Dunai, Russia, as early as mid-August. Toward the end of the month, another Russian vessel, Maria, became involved in a similar path. Shortly before they began operating along this route, according to the ship tracking website Marine Traffic, the 2 vessels turned off the signal of their automatic identification system, allowing Maria and Angara to hide their position as they illegally transited between ports. Also, around the same time, there was a rapid expansion of munition pits at an ammunition depot in Tukharetsk, close to the front lines. In the analyzed images, the 2 ships make multiple trips between Dunai and Rajin, picking up and delivering cargo at each location. At the Rajin port, the 2 ships load and unload containers at different docks. In Dunai, the ships have unloaded their cargo while accompanied by a military vessel. Conveniently, North Korea makes 2 of the types of munitions that Russia has used heavily in the war. the Soviet-era 122mm Grad rockets and 122mm howitzer artillery rounds. Now, desperately in need of more, as the war against Ukraine continues with no end in sight, North Korea and Russia have been collaborating for longer than the West initially thought. Other weapons also likely part of this exchange include artillery platforms and rocket launchers. The duo have made at least 5 trips since, moving hundreds of containers, according to the images. The latest delivery from North Korea to Russia took place on October 14th. Angara is owned by M Leasing, a Russian company that has already been sanctioned by the United States, the United Kingdom, and Ukraine for the transportation of weapons and military equipment in the interest of the Russian government. This company is in turn handled by Marine Transshipping, another controversial maritime shipping company sanctioned for transporting weapons for the Russian government. As for Maria, registration documents show a company called JSC Sofracht is associated with the vessel. In 2019, the United States named Sofracht as a company behind a sanctions evasion conspiracy to aid Russian forces operating in Syria in support of the regime of Bashar al-Assad. North Korea is not the first, and probably not the last rogue state that Russia has turned to for help during its grueling attrition war with Ukraine. Since 2022, Moscow has relied heavily on Iranian-made explosive drones to use on Ukrainian cities, civilians, and the country's infrastructure for over a year. Both of these partnerships have unsurprisingly drawn sharp criticism and condemnation from Washington. Following the critical announcement about this arms trade, American spokesman John Kirby stated, quote, "This expanding military partnership between the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and Russia, including any technology transfers from Russia to the DPRK, undermines regional stability and the global non-proliferation regime." Jack Watling, senior research fellow for land warfare at RUSI, also said that this exchange would likely have a severe impact on the trajectory of the war in Ukraine because of the already in-stock ammunition amounts by North Korea. In return for support, RUSI and the USA believe that Pyongyang is seeking military assistance from Russia, from fighter aircraft, armored vehicles, ballistic missile production equipment, and more advanced technologies. Since the early days of the Ukraine war, President Biden's administration has voiced suspicion that North Korea has supplied weapons to Russia. These beliefs were only amplified as it became clear last year that Moscow was running low on advanced weaponry and was expending massive amounts of shells in what has since become essentially an artillery-first war. Likewise, the USA and allies have searched the world for additional munitions for Ukraine, including the 155mm shells used by US-provided howitzers and other caliber shells for Soviet-era artillery still in use by Ukraine. In response to the violations caused by Russia, the United States decided to end the war as soon as possible and has already imposed sanctions on individuals working to facilitate arms deals with Russia. According to Kirby, America will enforce those where appropriate and will likely impose new sanctions against anyone who seeks to enable Russia's continuation of the war with Ukraine.